Hey, this is David. Today we have an electric Whirlpool range with an oven that won't heat. This could be happening for several reasons, including incorrect voltage, a defective bake element, a bad terminal block, a failing control board, or even a problem with the oven temperature sensor. Let's figure out what's going wrong so we can get back to making them biscuits. Before we get started, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel so you can see more repair guides like this one. With over 2 million products in stock and the know-how to help you do it yourself, we are AppliancePartsPros.com. First, we need to get our tools together. Today, we'll need a multimeter and a Phillips head screwdriver. Also, please remember that safety comes first. Always disconnect your electric range by unplugging it or switching the breaker off before you work on it. Now let's get started. First, we need to remove the rear terminal block cover. Go ahead and remove the Phillips head screws that hold the terminal block cover and set it aside. Then we're going to check for voltage at the terminal block. For this test, the range needs to be plugged in and powered on. Please be careful to protect yourself from electric shock, which has the potential to cause serious injuries. Don't ever test live voltage if you're uncomfortable using a multimeter. Use your multimeter set to volts AC and put one probe on the white terminal and the other probe on the black. You should get a reading of 120 volts AC. Then move the probe to the red terminal and keep the other probe on the white wire. You should see 120 volts AC. Finally, move one probe to the red terminal and the other probe to the black, and you should see 240 volts AC on the meter. If you aren't getting these readings, then the problem lies with the house wiring, not the range. While you're there at the terminal block, first unplug the range. Then take a look at the power cord and wiring. If you see any burn marks or broken wires, they'll need to be replaced. If everything looks and tests okay so far, we can move on. The next thing we're going to take a look at is the bake element. This can be tested in two different ways, one with live voltage and one without. We're going to test both ways. We're going to do a live voltage test now. Set your multimeter to the AC voltage setting. Then plug the range back in. At the oven control, you'll need to turn the oven on to bake. Then use your multimeter probes to test across the two terminals at the element. Don't remove the wires when you do this. On the meter screen, you should see 240 volts AC. If you're getting the right amount of voltage and the element doesn't heat, then the element is defective and needs to be replaced. Now we're going to test the bake element without having to deal with live voltage. Make sure your range is unplugged from the power outlet. Now find the bake element and remove one of the wires from it. You're going to set your multimeter to measure resistance in ohms, which has a symbol that looks like an upside-down horseshoe. You'll need to use your meter probes to check from one terminal to the other. And just so you know, the reason we remove one of the terminals is to make sure we isolate the element and the reading we get is only from the bake element. If the bake element is good, you should see around 20 to 25 ohms on the meter scale. If the reading is out of that range, you'll need to replace the element. And if you're wondering if you can test any bake or broil element for continuity, an element can appear as good on a continuity test but still not work. So resistance reading is a much more accurate way to test. And if the element tested okay, let's continue testing. If you check for voltage going to your bake or broil element and the voltage is incorrect, then the problem is either going to be with the control board or the wiring between the board and the element. But if you still want to test the board, I'll show you how. On most ranges, the oven control will be located in the console. On this model, the oven control is located in the front. To access the control, lift the cooktop and lock it into place. Remove the screws at the corners at the top, and there are also two on each corner underneath. You will need to open the oven door to get to them. Once the screws are out, you can pull the front panel forward and access the back of the board. Now plug the range back in or flip the breaker back on. Set your multimeter to volts AC and check across the P27 and P42 terminals. Then go to the console and turn the oven control to bake. You should see 240 volts coming out of the board. If you don't, then the board is defective and will need to be replaced. If the voltage is correct and you didn't get the proper voltage at the element, check the wiring that goes from your control to the element. You may have a broken wire. To check the wiring, you can turn the power off at the breaker or unplug the range. Set your meter to continuity and check from one end of the wire on the board to the element terminal to see if the wire is broken. This is very rare. Usually you'll see a burn mark at the terminal letting you know there's a problem with the wire. If you haven't run into any problems so far, let's check the temperature sensor. Although it's rare for an oven sensor to fail, it's still a possibility. If you suspect that the sensor isn't reading the temperature correctly, you can check it for resistance at the connection in the back. To check it at room temperature, make sure the range is unplugged or the breaker is turned off. Then remove the rear panel to access the probe connection.
It's held on with 9 Phillips screws.
Disconnect the plug and set your multimeter to resistance. When you check the 2 pins that go towards the oven sensor, you should see about 1080 ohms at room temperature. If the reading is way off, go ahead and replace the sensor. It's also possible for the sensor to read correctly at room temperature and still fail under high heat. After all of our testing today, we found out the bake element on this specific range is defective and needs to be replaced. If you have the same problem, let's walk through how to replace the element. To replace the bake element, open the door so that it lays flat. Then move the 2 tabs down to lock the hinges into place and remove the door.
Once that's off, go around back and remove the 2 wires connected to the bake element.
Remove the 2 screws that hold the element in place and gently pull the element out. Here's the old element and here's the new one. If you've already got one, great. If not, you can pick one up at appliancepartspros.com. Then place the new element into position and attach the 2 wires to the terminals. Once you replace the 2 screws and reinstall the door, release the tabs and test the door to make sure it closes correctly.
Now we can reinstall the rear panel and the terminal block cover.
That's it. And one more thing. When you power up the range and turn the oven on, you may notice a new smell coming from the element, but this is normal and will eventually burn off. Don't forget to plug the range back in or switch the breaker back on. Once you found the faulty part, whether it was the bake element or something else, grab your range model number and head over to appliancepartspros.com to order a replacement, which should arrive in just a few days. After you get your new part, we'll walk you through the installation with our video guides. Share your repair experience with us by leaving a comment below. And if this video helped, hit the like and subscribe buttons to see more videos like this one. Thanks for watching.